Okay, folks, I'm going to answer for you today a question that I really didn't think needed any answering, but there are still some people out there who think that The Incredible Hulk, the Marvel Cinematic Universe movie that was directed by Louis Leterrier and featured Ed Norton in the role of Bruce Banner, is actually a sequel to the 2003 Hulk movie directed by Ang Lee and featuring Eric Bana. Now, spoilers for these movies. I had no idea that anybody tried to connect these two movies together. But because at the end of the 2003 Hulk movie, we see that Bruce Banner is now somewhere down in a South American or Central American rainforest, and this is Bruce Banner here. He gets accosted by some basically government thug and goes all green eyed on the guy, and we just assume that the Hulk takes care of things from there. And so the movie ends with Bruce Banner being in South America, Central America, somewhere like that. Now, in the 2008 movie, the movie starts with Bruce Banner living in Brazil, and he's working on an assembly line, and he's just doing basically a menial job when he's not doing a little bit of electrical engineering to help out the boss on the side. So people have apparently put two and two together and said, well, if the last movie ended in South America and the next movie starts in South America, then hey, that's all you need to know. The one must be the sequel of the other. Well, I guess that could be true if you decided you were going to willfully ignore all of the differences between the two movies. And those differences can be categorized under two categories. The first category being the origin of the Hulk. So in the 2003 movie, we have Bruce Banner and Betty Ross working together on a project to create these things called nanomeds. These are nanomedical devices, nanotech being miniature machines that are capable of rebuilding cells. Now, whether these are organic, like molecular machines, or if these are like tiny robot machines, that doesn't really get specified there. But the point is that these nanomeds will go into a creature. They can be inhaled by a creature, and then, if that creature has any kind of wounds on it or anywhere in the body, cancers, things like that, if you activate the nanomeds with gamma rays, then the nanomeds will heal the person. So, the way that the Hulk goes about getting created, at least in part, is that Banner and his assistant Harper are trapped in the experiment room when some circuitry short circuits and starts the whole experiment process going. Now, at that point, the nanomeds get released into the atmosphere, and because Harper has the one gas mask between the two of them, he is able to get away safely and he does not inhale any of the nanomeds. But Bruce, on the other hand, does inhale the nanomeds, and worse than that, Harper happens to be sitting right in the path. You can see him in the small image here. He's sitting right in the path of the gamma ray gun, and he's too scared to move. So Bruce, valiantly, having just exposed himself to the nanomeds, which have actually killed every living creature they've tried it on so far after the gamma ray activation, throws himself in the path of the gamma rays, and the Hulk is created, right? Well, no, actually, what happens is they just basically take him to the hospital because I don't think it's even clear that he necessarily passed out. The gamma rays activated the nanomeds. The nanomeds seem to heal everything that's in him and haven't done anything. So all's fine and all's well, and he doesn't actually become the Hulk until later in the movie. So that is the origin of the Hulk. That's how the Hulk comes to be in the 2003 movie. Now, in the 2008 movie, we don't actually see this whole sequence of events take place of how the Hulk came to be, except in the opening sequence with a flashback. Basically, this is while Bruce is doing some meditations while he's in Brazil, and he's trying to keep his anger under control, and he's doing some meditative exercises. So during this time, he's flashing back on how the Hulk came to be. And the only real image that I want to point out from that whole sequence of flashbacks to start off with is this image, in which it's clear that the person he's experimenting on is not some animal and he's been caught in the lab by accident. He's actually experimenting on himself. He is the subject of his own experiment. And you think that's kind of crazy, except that General Ross actually backs this up later in the film where he explains Banner's work was very early phase. It wasn't even weapons application. He thought he was working on radiation resistance. I would never have told him what the project really was, but he was so sure of what he was onto that he tested it on himself, and something went very wrong. It's like, heck yeah, something went very wrong, because in the midst of this experiment on himself, he goes all green, changes into the Hulk, and then wrecks the entire lab. So this is two very, very different origin stories. In one case, you've got the Banner and an assistant caught in the lab, and he's hit with these nanomeds, and he's hit with these gamma rays, and that's what later will change him into the Hulk. But he doesn't turn into the Hulk at that time. Whereas in the 2008 movie, he's experimenting on himself purposefully. This is not an accident. What is an accident is the reaction of the experiment. He thought he was working on something to grant radiation resistance, and I guess he did, but he also wound up getting a whole ton of beefcake and a opposite of Donald Trump tan. So here we have that clear difference. And the other clear difference is the role that Betty plays in this portion, the difference between her and the two movies, because she's present at both instances of the Hulk's origin. So in the 2003 movie, we see that Betty is behind the glass. She's safe from the nanomeds, the gamma rays, and everything. And then she visits Bruce in the hospital, where I assume he went to the hospital with her. I mean, it's not even clear that he passed out during this whole thing. I had always kind of assumed that he'd got knocked unconscious by the gamma ray exposure or the nanomed activation, but I realize now that he probably just went with her awake to the hospital. So she's fine. Everything's fine. He's fine. She's fine. She never got hurt. Nothing happened because he never turned into the Hulk in the first place. So what would have happened to her? So she's perfectly okay. Now compare this against 2008, where, yeah, she's also behind the glass watching the experiment happen, watching him turn into the Hulk. But when he wrecks the place, he wrecks her pretty bad too. And so she winds up in the hospital with some severe injuries, one of which I believe is memory loss from the trauma of the event. And the reason I say that is because, well, not only is it really kind of common for people to lose some memory just prior to a traumatic event, but it seems clear from the college campus scene where you might be able to see Bruce Banner has been caught, and he's now caught in a hallway, a glass enclosed hallway between two sections of this college that is now slowly being filled up with tear gas. And he's afraid, but he doesn't really get angry until he sees Betty get manhandled by a couple of overzealous soldiers trying to capture her for her dad. And then he becomes the Hulk. And then General Ross, when he sees the Hulk emerge, says, "Now she'll see." Now she'll see, as if she's never seen the Hulk before, or at least has no memory of ever seeing the Hulk before. So once you see this, once you realize that she has, and this gets confirmed later on too, when you see her encounter the Hulk and she says, "Bruce," as if it's a question, as if it's a question. So she actually has no memory of ever having seen the Hulk before. Now, the problem is, if this is supposed to be a continuation of the 2003 movie, then you also have to explain away the fact that in that 2003 movie, she's seen the Hulk on a couple of occasions. You've got Betty here. It's kind of hard to see. She's in a dark frame, so I'm just pointing her out. This is Betty here, who's encountering the Hulk right before he changes into Banner. Or actually, this may be a portion where he's about to fight some dogs and then change into Banner. Yeah, you have to see the 2003 movie for yourself in order to explain that one. But then more towards the end of the film, when she encounters the Hulk face to face for a second time, when she's brought out to calm him down, and again he changes back to Banner right in front of her. So she should have a clear memory of Banner being the Hulk and what the Hulk looks like. This should not be a shock to her if 2008 were actually a continuation of 2003. So let's do a quick recap of all the ways that the 2003 and 2008 movies are different. 2003, you've got Banner working on banana meds to heal people. 2008, he's working on radiation resistance. It's not really said what he's using in order to do the radiation resistance, so that's not a whole heck of a lot of difference. But it's more the healing versus the very limited scope of radiation resistance that is important here. Because the healing in the 2003 movie, if you had like a cut on you, then the cut would heal. So that's not exactly radiation resistance you're working on there. 2003, Banner has a lab experiment accident. 2008, Banner is the lab experiment's subject. So it's not by accident that he's in the room when he gets the gamma ray hit. He's supposed to be there. That's the point of the whole test. 2003, Banner doesn't Hulk out in the accident. He doesn't change until quite a bit later. 2008, Banner totally hulks out at that time. 2003, Betty is unharmed by the lab accident. 2008, Betty is hospitalized by the experiment gone wrong. That's a pretty significant difference. And last but not least, 2003, Betty sees the Hulk multiple times. And in 2008, Betty sees the Hulk for the first time, which you just can't put those two together. You can't combine the two and expect to have some sort of coherent sequel. But if you still don't believe all of these differences between the movies, if that's not enough to justify it in your mind, just listen to the director, Louis Leterrier. When Superhero Hype interviewed him, it said, "You had Ed running around Brazil, so it seems to continue where the last movie left off because that one left Bruce Banner in South America." And Leterrier says, "No, not really, not at all, actually. We're starting a new franchise." So, the answer to is Hulk 2008, a sequel to Hulk 2003? Big fat no, it's not. And it just amazes me that people just like string these things together on the least bit of evidence. I mean, yes, it is kind of coincidental that he ended up in South America in the first movie and then starts out in South America in the second movie, but big whoop, yo. In fact, the guy who was arguing with me on this actually said that Avengers was a full reboot of Incredible Hulk, even though they're both MCU movies, even though you really can't have reboots within the MCU. He actually argued that Avengers was a reboot because it started the Hulk off in India. And also because it never mentions the Abomination. Of course, we saw the Abomination in a later movie. I won't spoil which one that is. But I'm just like, are you serious? You think that because they don't mention certain elements from a previous movie, and because he's ended up several years later in a location that he's never been in before, that we've never seen him in before, you think that's cause to call it a full reboot? I mean, my God. Oh, so anyway, yeah, the things people will tell themselves. Maybe I'll have to do a video sometime on what is the difference between the different kinds of movies: a prequel, a sequel, a reboot. Is it a soft reboot or is it a hard reboot? There's a difference between those two. So maybe one of those days I'll take on that video. But today I think it's just sufficient to say no. Hulk 2008 is not a sequel to Hulk 2003. I hope this video convinces you because I really don't want to waste any more time arguing this one anymore. I'm Mike Partika. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and I will talk to you later.